the controls to move the slide, so I may need your help with that. But I do want to remind everybody who's on here, there we go, thank you very much, that we are here, and I'm acknowledging that we are mostly women here dealing with this topic of the sandwich generation. I really want to give you some information today that should help you. Most significantly, I want you to leave today knowing that you're not alone. If you get nothing else from this today, we've got gobs of resources. You've got your Anthem EAP. You'll see a slide at the end about how you can access and how much we have to help you with all the issues regarding being someone who perhaps has children at home, whether they are elementary school age children, high school, or even issues that surround our college age children, and as well as our young adults who may have moved home, while we are simultaneously, distantly or immediately taking care of somehow managing the lives or moving into that phase of managing and helping with the lives of aging parents. And so I just want to start to give perspective on this of how life has changed. It's not new that there's been a generation in the middle raising children or having children and having older parents that they take care of. You know, TV shows in the 70s and throughout time have, you know, the Waltons being one of the famous one where grandma and grandpa lived on the property, and that actually very long ago dealt with grandma becoming demented before we even knew what Alzheimer's was. But to put this in perspective, census figures have, on the good news point, that the poverty rate for people over 65 has plummeted by more than two-thirds, from 28.5% in 1966 to 9.1% in 2012. That's good news. That's the advent of Social Security. However, as we are living longer, that doesn't mean necessarily we are living well longer. Longer lives make different challenges. So at the beginning of the 20th century, only 4 to 7% of people in their 60s had at least one parent still living. Today, that's nearly 50%. And as recently as 1990, only 25% of adults between the ages of 18 and 24 lived with their parents. And by 2000, and in response to the recession, we have young adults. It's about 52%. So we may have young adults. So that's one way of looking at the sandwich generation. If you have 3 generations of adults living in your home, or you have children who are high school and younger. And what has really changed the scenario, why we have to look at some of these items here, is that the improvement in death rates and life expectancy for our population groups has been attributed to the reductions in death rates from major causes of death, such as heart disease and cancer, stroke, and chronic lower respiratory diseases, such as tuberculosis, which ravaged, really was a plague not all that long ago. So in other words, sudden death is rare. Terminal illness is unlikely over 80. What we're having to deal with as our parents age is that they're most likely to die from organ failure or just frailty. In other words, they're just going to slowly lose their capacities, and we're going to talk about those capacities of independence that they may lose simultaneously or individually, which then becomes another piece of life management we need to do. So just to full disclosure, we're really looking at this as not so much what you do with your children, though I will give you some resources to help you with your children at the end, refer you to some places and resources, particularly if you want to chat in whether you're dealing with younger children, elementary or high school age children, you want some resources from that. I have some of that for you. But we're really looking at what we need to do for our parents. Now, I want to preface this collecting information. I learned hard in the hard way, perhaps, about collecting information. It's never too early. It's never too early for yourself, and it is extremely important as we move forward with our aging parent. Just looking at what doctors will tell you. Doctors will tell you that a specialist knows a lot about a little. A general practitioner or an internist knows a little about a lot. So that makes management of collecting information for your parent and making sure they get the best care. If we're in a medical situation, that means you become the care coordinator. Also, we need to look a minute. I experienced this with my father. He was a diabetic. He suffered leg amputations. He also had really what was I could call an 8-year decline. He was only 48 when his decline started. He died by 56, and he had all the aspects of dementia due to strokes, due to diabetic complications, due to gangrene. And I was lucky, and I really speak to this bullet point. Don't rely on single instances to assess where an aging parent is. Look at the collective. I helped my mother by being a source because I saw my father at intervals of 2 or 3 months. So if you are in the sandwich and have a college-age student, or even those 10-year-olds in our household, can give us perspective on how grandpa or grandma or Aunt Tilly, whomever you're taking care of, if they're living at home or if you're going to visit them, how they're doing. Why are they so grumpy? Is there a change in behavior? How come she doesn't know what day it is? Hey, we used to play cards, and she can still play cards. This is a true story just a month ago with my mother. Still can play the card game, do the hardest thing, but expresses an inability to understand one of the rules. The brain's a fascinating thing. So we'll talk about, as we talk about physical, cognitive, mental, and safety issues, the brain is very dynamic. Where it can cease functioning to be independent, safely independent, changes over the time. Things such as alcoholism can impact, it's not just Alzheimer's, it's not just dementia, it's not just stroke. Where we age depends in part on our education. The more education, the more engaged our parents are with the community, the more they retain cognitive abilities, and then all of a sudden we may see a precipitous decline. So we want professional assessments, and you want a really good professional assessment. In other words, an internist is a place to start, but remember I said, the specialists know a lot about a little. So you do want to go to someone with your parent, with the elder person you're dealing with, to a specialist, to a special psychologist, if that's what you're having evaluated, to know how deep is an impairment or where we're going. How can we, I say as a family, we preserve life as best as possible and give them a quality life. I'll give an example of how professional assessments can be sort of two-tiered. With my father, as he was having his brain impacted, he still knew, he was a physician, he still knew information, research that up until 4 days before he died, he knew information he had learned in his heyday, in his 30s, 40s, and 50s. What happened, however, and it became apparent when we were playing Trivial Pursuit, brought some friends home from graduate school out to the country, some fresh air out of the city, and a friend brought the game Trivial Pursuit. My father could answer almost every question in Trivial Pursuit. However, he blurted the answers out. He neither had impulse control nor could he understand the rules of the game. So his prefrontal cortex, his working memory wasn't working so well. His social management wasn't working so well. That's why you need a professional assessment. The first tier of a professional assessment showed, hey, he was okay. He was in the above average range, but this is a really bright man. And then it moved on. Deeper testing showed he was really impaired. That meant he certainly was no longer allowed to drive, and that was one of the issues. We'll talk about that when we talk about independence. He was no longer safe to drive because he couldn't judge an ongoing situation. So, and we want to include our parents. We'll talk about loss of independence as we go through this today, but we really want to include our parents in the information gathering. And this is the phase I'm at with my mother right now. I want to share with her, ask her, how's she feeling? What's going on in her life? Does she, she's retired. She's been retired a long time. So is the fact she doesn't know what the date is a major thing or not? Some tests, just about all cognitive tests will ask, do you know what date is? Do you know who the president is? This may or may not be as telling as other things. And certainly that fear, and understand as we're collecting information and having these very, I think for most of us, tough conversations, which are very variable depending on our relationships that we've already had growing up with our parents, how we view our parents, whether we have not had so much relationship with them. Understand that the fear we experience is fear on our side too. We are changing our role. We're becoming the caretaker, and that means, whether we like to admit it or not, we're losing part of our being a child anymore. So we can grieve as they are aging, and we have to look at that and look at the discomfort and get support from our families and for others. So I've been giving glimpses already as we're talking about getting that information from our parents. We need to discuss openly our concerns. Now that looks really simple. Those 4 little words look so simple in print, right? We just discuss openly with our concerns. This is an area where you may need to script it. If your relationship with your parent or the person you're dealing with has been one of do as I say so, and they've been really strong and independent, or maybe they don't talk much, they don't complain much, that can be equally as difficult, you're going to have to practice your assertive communication. And I really advise scripting it out, going to many of the resources I'll talk about at the end, to find a script. How do you carefully, authentically bring up the issues, those items that you're starting to observe in their behavior? Is it that they're weaker on the right side because they had a stroke? Is it that they are no longer safe? You don't want them cooking. Maybe they can live independently most of the time, but you're afraid they're mixing up their medications, so they need someone coming in their home. Some people are very much attuned and sensitive. They want their privacy, and I don't need anybody. And some of the aspects of the aging parent is that they may feel paranoid. Their loss of control brings it out, so they don't want someone coming into their home. They may be afraid of someone stealing that. They may have had a friend who had someone steal items from their home. You may be afraid of that. So you really need to put the cards on the table. And discussing openly your concerns doesn't have to happen all at once. In fact, I counsel that we're going to do this in baby steps if in your position that your parent can, and I understand some of you may already have parents who are not able to have these conversations. So, my sympathies and empathy for those of you who are already beyond this phase of being able to discuss the concerns. But look at it and do it in small steps. So it could be, hopefully, for yourself, discuss where are the financial documents that you need to have for them, their will, their health care proxy, some of those paperwork, financial, who's their lawyer, do they have a will, and then move on to the bank account, safe deposit keys, all those very matter-of-fact administration type conversations you can have. The next phase is to ask them, if you can't speak for yourself in the hospital, who do you want to speak for you? Who do you want making the decisions about your life? find out who that is. If it's not you, then certainly I say, enlist your help, get on the team to help your parent. Other concerns can be, okay, I'm worried about your balance. I'm worried that you have a gas stove, and Mom, I don't want you, and you're shrinking, and your balance is a little off, and I know you have Meniere's disease, which is a vertigo disease. I'm really worried about you. I don't want you using your gas stove anymore. So let's change it up. Would a toaster oven be safety? Would Meals on Wheels be better for you? Once again, there are so many options to help your parent, and we'll talk about that under independence. So discuss your concerns, and then as you're communicating, think resourcefully and acknowledge that your parent, this bottom line will so color our conversations that we have with our parent, which is, or older one, losing independence, losing that driver's license, having someone infringe on their personal space. It may be the best thing that can happen to them because they're not alone, they're not bored, they're maybe doing activities, gaining mobility by having someone come to their home, or having someone, or you or your high school-aged daughter, or even in our area where I am in suburban New York, the National Honor Society, students can get community service credit by helping seniors. Appreciate that independence, it feels like who we are. And so losing it is huge and enormous to everyone involved. And the heart of the authentic communication is the examples. As I said, hey, Mom, the example I gave about, Mom, you don't want her cooking over gas anymore? Hey, Mom, that gas flame, you can even use some humor to lighten up. You're not as tall as you used to be. Having things above the stove is really too hard for you, and I'm really worried about you climbing on the steps still like the good old days, because I notice a weakness on your right side, and it's going to be really hard for you to change stepping up on your left foot first. True story, what my mother has to do. She's weak on the right side, except that's the side she steps up on first. I had to communicate with her tripping hazards, safety issues. She's in a senior development. That's all wonderful, except that doesn't change the hazards in her apartment. So if she has a loose rug because she wanted to move one of her little oriental rugs to have her home in her new home rather than wall-to-wall carpeting, which she doesn't like, that loose rug, that little runner, was a massive tripping hazard. It could never stay flat. I had to communicate with her and say, hey, Mom, and sometimes we just need to take the bull by the horns and say, Mom, I'm going to put this in a better place for you and make the decision for them. I'm going to make it so you can't trip, because I know you say you're going to bounce if you fall down. You got plenty of padding on your hips, except I'm more worried about you banging your head on the way down and bleeding profusely and someone not knowing right away, because you do live independently, that someone not knowing that you're injured. These are conversations that are hard to have. As I say, do it in baby steps. Script it out, write it out, practice with your child or your spouse, your partner, someone at work, someone who's been through it before, who maybe knows how it is to handle someone with dementia or Alzheimer's, the belligerence or the forgetfulness, the level of patience that's required. You're not alone. There's plenty of resources. Remember that. Moving right along here. Oops, let me go back. Sorry, hit too hard. Okay, doing it all. I see here we have a lot of women. Now, this is being recorded, let me remind you. So it may be that this may be listened to by men, but the fact is women tend to do the most care of their parents, even of their in-laws, maybe an aunt. I know, hey, I'm a sandwich generation woman, and I not only am concerned about my mother, I have a friend in her 80s who I helped, who really has no functional children, helping her in her life, and I'm the go-to person when she broke her hip. I helped her this fall with all of the issues dealing with her broken hip and convalescence and problems at home with her husband who was still at home. We really need to remember that, and I want you all to remember that you do have Anthem. You do have huge resources through your employee assistance program. But just as we are, if we're sandwich generation people, we have perhaps raised children. Perhaps we're in the process of raising children. And we have to look at how much can we do. We are no good to our work, to our families that we're raising, to the family we're taking care of, if we don't take care of ourselves first. Think of that oxygen mask on the airplane. And so we really get caught up with the idea that we have so many tasks to do that we forget about what can we not do. Looking at this time management thing, making every second count, that includes meditation for yourself, exercise, and some of you may be laughing at this point. My exercise is lifting up Mom or doing extra laundry or driving her places. I don't have time for my own doctor's visits, for my own care. These are all common things I've heard before. And that's why I want to back up here. Ask for help. I've already said the EAP. I've already said, as someone here is chatting in, their mother losing independence is the biggest thing. So you're looking at your mother's everyday changes. That driver's license is a huge thing. Understand, if you feel like you need to have your parent have their license revoked or removed for them, think of the greater good. You're doing a great gift to get unsafe drivers, both for your parent. Vehicular manslaughter is an issue down in Florida where the senior population is very large. It is an issue. Know that if your parent had a major, depending on your state that you live in Connecticut, I know for a fact that if your parent or someone has a stroke, a major surgery, there's a duty of the doctor and the hospital to report that, and the Department of Motor Vehicles will remove their driver's license. They'll notify them their license is not active, and they will have to go through the process of being retested, maybe taking some driver's ed, to see if they should get their license back again. So sometimes with your realistic expectations, you can remove yourself from being the bad parent, if you will. You can remove it and make it objective so it's just not one other area of conflict. The everyday changes, I noticed a couple of years ago, I live here in suburban New York. Interstate 95, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is the highway that gets my mother from Connecticut to me. I don't want her driving on I-95. A couple of years ago, I realized I don't want her taking the risk of what should have been an easy 2-hour drive that she used to do back and forth in one day. With the traffic, certainly with the type of winter we've had now, heavy rain, she could be on the highway for 3 or 4 hours. She does have continence issues. She has stamina issues at 86. I don't want her on the highway that long. So as we slowly changed how we were going to get her here to visit. So now she takes the train. So there's public transportation. Or because my children are older, I can have my children go pick her up and bring her here. We pretty much keep her off the road for long roads, and she's very willing. And she's supposed to come here tomorrow, and she's decided, hey, with the weather, I'm not going to even take the train down to visit you. I'm just not going to do that. So she's lost some of that independence, that ability to jump in the car, get up and go, do as she wants, which she enjoyed for so much of her retirement. But look at those everyday changes. And make your life simple where you can. And that includes to what socks, how you do the laundry. If you need, this end-of-life phase may feel like forever, but just as we know in raising children, it really isn't forever. It can feel that way. It can be very intense task-wise, but maybe you just need to make some simple changes that, for right now, I'm only going to make meals in a crock pot. And we're going to eat a lot of leftovers and visit the same meals. Or people may have food preferences in this household, but if mom's diabetic and mom's living with me, I am going to, everybody's going on a diabetic meal plan. That's not bad. We need to really, in doing it all and keeping ourselves in shape to take care of our aging relatives, and look at the golden silver lining in the cloud. Look at that piece where, we're being better for this. The oxygen mask, clearly taking breaks, re-energize your battery. One of the resources that I'll refer to is Lots of Helping Hands. It's a tool to help you make a schedule so you can get people coming in. Your parent may have belonged to a church, may belong to a church and be living independently, or other religious organization, or any number of clubs from Rotary to you name it. People in those clubs can be really helpful to you. People in those organizations can be really helpful to you. People at the local community center, if your parent isn't living near you, have resources. Communities at large, remember, you're not alone. Communities at large have many resources because there's so many people who are now over 60, over 65, who are living past 80, and there are resources that you can avail to keep, particularly that cognitive aspect, keep them engaged, increase their independence. Now, using technology, there's an app for that. Technology and its resources helped an elderly aunt to be able to communicate with their children with a phone that changed what was said over the phone as the aunt got deaf. She had a home health aide coming in and helping her with that, but she wanted to talk with her children and her grandchildren. So they set up a phone, her children set up a phone, so that the communication came in and was translated to text. Not really that expensive a tool, but a tool that really helped maintain the independence and the connection. Likewise, there's other tools such as if you really are at the phase of having mom or dad or both live independently. Maybe dad's taking care of mom with beginning stages of Alzheimer's. This true story happened to friends, both over 80. Wife has Alzheimer's, beginning stages, and husband has a stroke. This picture had a stroke. Luckily, they were part of a church community, but really luckily was that the wife with Alzheimer's could call 911 and did call 911. So her husband, Frank, got to the hospital as he should have very swiftly. And because there was resources like in this Lots of Helping Hands type setup, the communication went out, secondly, to friends and families through church who could help take care of Aileen and drive her back and forth to the hospital because she can't drive anymore. Another type of technology that's really burgeoning and really unusual or useful to us is the same technology that's going through burglar alarm systems that we can watch a parent have the equivalent of nanny cams. Sounds a little spooky. You're going to have to get some cooperation. Remember, explain that the reason I want to be able to check in on you is that I'm worried. I'm worried about a slip and fall, and like that commercial says, I've fallen and I can't get up. Yeah, the Life Alert pendants, yep, that's being used by my mother-in-law, who's almost 90. I took a lot of kicking and I'd say stern conversations to get her to take that technology, but it gives us all peace of mind because we're all over 10 hours away from her, yet we know the resources nearby her. If you can mute your phone, I'm getting a little conversation there. Also new technology, and this is really interesting to me, is something called Be Close technology. So it's not just the cameras, it's technology that plugs into the typical appliances. Say mom or dad would turn on the coffee pot and set the coffee pot running at a certain time, or then go sit and read or turn on the television at a certain point in time. Or whatever it is, the Be Close technology has the ability to notice and inform you, hey, if mom or dad or Aunt Tilly isn't doing her normal routine, then I'm going to be notified that, hey, something's not up. Is she home? Did she just go and visit someone and just didn't tell me? Okay, that's okay. Maybe she went on a trip if she's still able to go on a trip. But if not, then you can call other resources and say, hey, please check on mom or dad. Please check on Aunt Tilly and find out why, or we can give a call or then enlist the help that we've arranged to come and help our elder one find out what's going on. Why aren't they moving around today? Are they just sick, sleeping late, or did they have a stroke in their sleep? Ultimately, that's how my father's major illness was a stroke in his sleep, and he'd fallen out of bed. My mother was home and could find him, but that may not be the case for you. Okay, here's the proactive piece, and I neglected to say as we were talking about collect information, you want to collect information from observers who are objective. In other words, if you're in a day-to-day situation, the observation, as I said, from your college-age student or your young adult child who's coming back at intervals who can see, for instance, Dad can't remember his favorite poems or talk about some aspect of his work or tell that favorite story anymore. He just can't access that. He's lost that brain functioning. You want to have, and as a sandwich generation person with young adult children, I have done the following for my children. I've shown them where the documents are. I've shown them on the financial paperwork side. I've shown them the life insurance notebook, who my physicians are, copy of my health care card. Likewise, as the manager and coordinator of your parents' care, your elder person's care, you want to have, I know we can put it all on our phones, our iPads, our tablets, or whatever. I'm a big believer in having a paper copy because it can be really easy to bring that, make it a bright red color, and in case you're sick and someone else has to take your parent to a doctor's office, somebody else can pick up that notebook, get the discharge papers, say, here's the medicines they've taken, really coordinate that care when coordination is necessary. Anticipate issues, tripping and slipping hazards. Big problem for women who then fall, break their hips, osteoporosis issues, dental health. Dental health is an issue you need to make sure mom's still going to the dentist. Does she do her checkup? Memory evaluation. Some estimates have that we really could have much better aging outcomes if we really looked at evaluating how memory is now and have a baseline point. We do it for our EKGs and our heart health all the time. Doctors will do a electrocardiogram and see what our heartbeat looks like. We need to do this with our cognitive functioning too. We want to get ahead. We want to prevent accident and injury. So remove the tripping hazards, the rug on rugs. Notice that they're shrinking, and maybe a Foreman grill is a better thing to use to heat up a chicken breast. If they want to cook independently, then cook on a fried pan on the gas stove. Make sure those smoke detectors and carbon monoxide things are working in their homes if they're living independently. New and aging neighbor who kept having headaches, she'd go to the hospital, be fine. It ended up that someone had covered up her chimney, an exterminator had covered up her chimney so bees wouldn't get in her house, except she was getting carbon monoxide poisoning. You know, it's these little things that can have huge impacts to how we're perceiving how our parents are aging and how they experiencing their aging and their let's face facts, their last days of life as they move forward. And the last days, maybe months, maybe years, and we don't know where that's going to be. And being proactive for yourself, you're already doing this. You're already taking a step to adjust to the fact that your parents are likely to need more support. You know, the fact that they're going to have organ failure most likely. If they've lived to 80 or moving that way, they're going to need some help in some areas of their lives managing it. And also being proactive. This is a time where I include speaking, if you have siblings, if you have cousins, be proactive in knowing what their life is about. In other words, know their friends. You know, my teenage son, I had his cell phone list of friends. I knew whom to call. I had the phone numbers. I had emails. So if I needed to communicate with someone about where he was, I had resources there. You want to know your parents' doctors. You want to know not just Marge is their best friend who lives across the street. You want Marge's phone number across the street if your parent has a buddy system with an elderly person. Their bridge club, whatever it is they're involved in, as once again, if it's whatever their activity is, and if they have a friend whom they've relied on and they talk to and they still do things with, if they're independent like that still, you want to have the contact information for those people as well. So when things go wrong, particularly if you're living from a distance, or let's face facts, you're at work and you can't get to them, you're not reaching through to them, and you want to remind them, hey, I'm going to pick you up for a doctor's appointment this afternoon, be ready at 2, and you're not hearing all morning, you can't get through to them, you want to know that neighbor. You want to know those people who can help you and check on them. So really, you know, we got to make ourselves feel good that if we've raised children, you know, that's why we're in the sandwich. We're already doing this. We've already done this with our children. The different part is that we need to do it for our parents, and that can feel extremely awkward, but it is being proactive and a way to have that communication, that resources with their friends and extended community for parents who are far away. Offer your phone number as someone to those individuals. Offer it's like, well, give me a call or let me know. I want my mom to give you my phone number. So develop deep relationships. We've done this in our neighborhood with aging people in my neighborhood, and we have Rob, who's checked on and really helped a senior live and end her life well and take care of her home and helped her children who were in, you know, a few hours away in Pennsylvania. And it was great. Even if the children maybe don't give an appropriate thanks, he went to bed at night knowing he was doing the right thing. So take your steps. Learn something about the brain when we're talking about cognitive things. If you suspect Alzheimer's or dementia, there are so many organizations and information you can find out about what that particular disease is. Beware kind of, you know, have your mom or dad, we're talking about physically, how is their balance? Are they walking crooked? Look at them as they're walking. Does Mom always carry her purse open, and crooked on one side? These things are aging with our spine ages straight and erect so we can stay balanced. We do lose flexibility. We do, Mom may be low-key about things, say, hey, well, I got buzzing in my ear. It's like, well, that buzzing in her ear could be the signs and impact their balance, which does tend to go along with the flexibility. We don't want them to break a hip because that leads to hospitalizations, and there is a strong correlation to problems generated from breaking hips, particularly in our mothers or aunts. Respectful. How do we have these hard conversations and appreciate who they are even as they might be changing? They are our elders. They are as adults, but they can behave as the worst part of themselves that ever was. As I said, my father lost his filtering as far as his ability to have certain impulse control. Now, some people that comes in the form of swearing, or you don't want to be touched, or why are you always in my face, that kind of belligerence, which may remind us of the terrible twos or adolescence. They're still adults, and the more we can get to this authentic peace, de-stress it ourselves, speak from a position of, I'm really concerned about you. I worry. It's my worry that I have, and I don't like this feeling that I'm worried that your driving is really scary. I see that driving is taking place in the middle of the road, or at nighttime you're really squinting, and can you really see? We don't have to patronize our elders to do this. We really can say the truth by saying the right thing in the right way at the right time for the right reason. That's why we want to be proactive and go down the issues of independence and say, I know this is hard. I know it's hard not to be able to get to your bridge game or get to bingo or come visit us at spur of the moment like you used to, and really then enlist, make yourselves a team like we want to at work, and we're going to make this work out. We're going to figure out a way to make this work for you. And someone just is reminding, don't let others take down to the elders. Thank you for bringing up that point. 2 points on this. If you have a parent, I worked with individuals with cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophy. So I worked with populations of all ages who were in wheelchairs. And certainly my father, with his leg amputation, spent a huge amount of time in a wheelchair. And my friend who recently broke her hip at 80-something was in a wheelchair. A person in a wheelchair functionally is the height of maybe a 7, 8, 9-year-old. People talk down to them. Physically, they're talking down, they're looking down. And it's just a habit that if we're standing, if another person is standing and talking to the person in the wheelchair, they can get the kindergarten teacher voice, and it's really demoralizing. Yes, I may be losing brain function, but not necessarily so. I can still be really sharp and just have a bad hip or a sprain or something else, some other reason why I'm in a wheelchair going through an airport because it's a long way from the gate, and I don't have that stamina. So not letting people talk down, particularly true in the doctor's office. I learned this and I was reminded of it as I did take my friend who broke her hip to the doctor's office. Because I was with her, first of all, they assumed I was a daughter, and that was a logical assumption. I had to correct them, no. They kept her company in the waiting room because it was a classic doctor's office where she spent a lot of time in the examining room waiting to go to x-ray and waiting for this. When the doctors or nurses came in, they spoke to me. It was as if she no longer had cognitive abilities. And both of us, both my friend Carol and I, had to say, speak to her. I was not there to take notes. Now, sometimes that may change over time, that, I might have been in the position of needing to take notes, but still, you can take notes as an accompanying individual and have the elder be spoken to directly. Unless they're severely demented, they can still get that respect, and really the doctor may get more information if they're making eye contact with a patient versus eye contact with you. So it is really important that respect is not a luxury, or courtesy. Respect is essential for everyone involved getting the information they need, getting the communication they need. Communication's a two-way street, so I need to look in my parents' eyes, and if I'm giving them an instruction, speak to them as they are. Maybe I'm going to speak a little simply, but I don't have to go to a kindergarten person's voice. I don't. I can speak to my mom and say, hey, Mom, I'm going to take a deep breath. Hey, Mom, I'm really concerned that, and this is the conversation I was going to have if my mother was going to come. Now the weather's prevented that, so I'm going to go to her on Monday. I've already found out she wants to age in place. I found out or reviewed where her documents are, who her accountant is, and where her health care proxies, all that administrative stuff. I got that set. The conversation that I'm moving forward is, hey, Mom, I am really worried about memory issues for you. We've noticed that you're missing some of the rules to the card games, some of the other markers. I want you to take this test, and I'll talk about it, one that can be self-administered and then taken to the doctor. And I want you to have a doctor's appointment. I want you to have a physical with that. And I may want to go with you, and let's schedule it together. Because I'm going to own my own worry, just like I did when my kids were teens. I'm going to own the worry. It's like, yeah, you may feel safe and confident that you know how to drive a car, but I'm not going to let you drive on a snowy, slippery night, not at 17. The worry is mine, and I admit it as my worry. You don't have to go into all the other stuff. Do know that your authenticity can greatly influence compliance moving down the road. So what do I mean? If you're being manipulative, and that goes hand in hand with an aging person who is increasing in paranoia, you may run the risk that they find you out, and it's not going to play well. They're going to then have more resistance to your assistance. So we have to look at that. Also being respectful and being proactive, to go back a slide or two. It may be that the person who is living with your parent, if it's not you, may be a sibling, and here's an area of extreme conflict for some people, may be the sibling who just never got out on his or her own. Could be because there's some developmental issue that the individual had, or it could be the codependent child that the parent has taken care of for a very long time. And this can be a source of conflict that needs to be negotiated very carefully. So you may be the responsible sister, and you may get in conflicts, and then the adult parent defends the child who has lived with them so long, even though you might look at the bank account and say the bank accounts are thinning out. I know some of these seem like extreme stories. However, I've heard this story over and over again. So you need to respect that your parent can love all children equally, and that can include a sibling that you are not so close with, and you're going to have to negotiate through that as well. Once again, it's not comfortable, but it is something we all have to do, or some of us have to do, and trust me, there are people who have already lived through that experience. So independence, as someone already chimed in, independence is the issue that a parent is most struggling against. And we can understand this. Our need, our desire as individuals to want independence, we have to look no further than your average teenager to know that we are motivated biologically to want to live independently. And so we need to look at that, recognize it, and then work creatively. Now, I already talked about the technology like Be Close. What are the solutions and strategies that you need? Is it a home health aid? Is it, I know people who have had, frankly, sort of helped rent out or had someone, a college student or someone live with them. It helps defray, get some rent if they're living independently in their homes, but also has someone who, a human, not technology, who's there checking in and living in the space, sharing it with a parent. That's been the solution for numerous people I know. So if the house is too big, they have someone who takes a room or two, maybe prepares the meals in exchange. Maybe it's a graduate student. That way the needs are met. Now, clearly this isn't in the situation of someone needing a lot of medical care, but maybe coordinated with a visiting nurse type situation together, that makes a package so mom or dad can stay in their home if they want to. Independent living, we need to look at. Mobility is a big issue for me, having lived and worked with people who are in wheelchairs. You've got to look at, can they get around? Can they live, or are they willing to live as they age, even if you bring them to your home to live with you? Can they get in and out of the house? Are you accessible? Are you capable of carrying a wheelchair up steps? Are there elevators? Is there a way for them to bathe? How are you going to manage this? Are you willing to have a bed in your dining room and a porta potty in your dining room, because that's the only room they can get in because you don't have room to ramp your house? It's a situation we lived in, which means also for independence, it allowed mobility and not being in a nursing home for my father, but as a matter of the sandwich generation, I was old enough to appreciate. I was in my early 20s when that was happening. So I could appreciate, I don't like a porta potty in the dining room, and yes, I'll take care of the odor, but this is the way we're going to take care of my father. We're not going to put him in a nursing home. The nursing home, the convalescent home, is an issue that looms large. So when we're talking about independence or care, we need to discuss with our spouses, with our children, with people who help us plan out our own finances. We need to opt for solutions that preserve our financial health, because no one's going to pay for our retirement, and we are likely to live to be 90 or 100. I mean, our life expectancies are getting longer just as much as our parents are. And so we need to opt for independence as much as possible, and be aware that independence is a value that varies from family to family. It varies between you and your partner or your spouse or your sister-in-law or your brothers-in-law. Some are going to want to opt for independence, say, hey, mom's okay, and mom's not really okay, and the neighbors will know mom's not okay. And it may be a very difficult situation to decide, hey, mom is hoarding, or mom who used to be fastidious, she always had her lipstick on and every hair in place, is now wearing the same clothes 5 days in a row, and she doesn't even comb her hair anymore, and she has no idea what day of the week it is. I take a deep breath here, because these are the sort of situations where I couldn't advise you all without talking a long time with each of you individually, because all of us have different financial resources. We have different job responsibilities. We have different family makeups of siblings or near family, people who are really close who can help us. Depending on where we live, there are different levels of resources. So we want that trust and acceptance from the help. Good help is challenging to find. When you have good help, really appreciate it. Appreciate him or her who comes to the house. Elder abuse does happen. I don't want to dwell on that. However, do treat them respectfully and nicely. It's really hard work, which generally we don't pay enough for. So appreciate that they are dedicated people. They are professionals when we enter to, whether it's visiting nurse or Meals on Wheels or home health aide or just someone to be a companion. We want them to have the care to keep them safe. And we know, particularly if they're in dementia or somewhere where your parent is not behaving socially so well to the people who help them, understand that that's a difficult profession to have. I have mentioned lots of resources. I want to give you some more resources here. You don't have to go it alone. I said at the beginning, I want you to know you are not alone. There are millions of us managing our parents' aging and doing the best we can. And I guess we got to take a page from what we learned as parents ourselves, that we're going to make mistakes and we're going to do the best we can. And it would be nice if we had all the resources in the world, the time, the money to do everything, and we just don't. So we're going to make the best decision we can. A lot of people can weigh in, your sister-in-law, the neighbors, your cousins. May we say, well, I did it this way. And you have to get comfortable, just as you did with raising your children. I understand that, and this is the way I have to do it. You really have to be assertive, and that's part of taking care of yourself, too, and managing your stress in this situation. There are many professionals and resources, and I really say get that notebook for yourself. If you want to, take screenshots of everything on the notebook and have it in your phone so you have sort of a redundant system, share it with your siblings, share it with your young adult children. Know all the resources that are and have a place where you have the information consolidated. There are resources from everything to figure out how to pay your medical bills, online for psychological and social support for you. There's the Caregiver Space, which is formerly the Caregiver Survival Network. So the Caregiver Space has lots of 24/7 support group and support for you. Many minds, many hands make light work. So there are people who, even you just want to say that it's hard taking care of Mom, and I kind of won't be sad when she dies. I will be, but I won't. Saying those words, having someone who understands that can be really rich, and know that you don't want your parent's life to end, but you may already be feeling like your parent is not alive the way he or she was, and you're dealing with that difficulty. You may have to learn the assertiveness to say to coworkers who might know Mom or Dad, met them at events, and they ask how Mom is. You may have to learn to say, hey, she's not going to get better. She has Alzheimer's, so I appreciate your concern, and I'll keep that in mind. And please don't ask me again. It's really hard for me to make it through the day hearing that. Local support, community resources. I already told you some of the creative ones that are in my community with the National Honor Society students. Transportation, and the public transportation is available. Other resources, web resources, is the Caregiving Club, which gives monthly webinars and me time monthly. So you take care of yourself on Monday. You make yourself a date with yourself Really important if you are married to keep that partnership alive and well, and just as you might have done when your kids were little, have a date with your spouse, have a date with a child one at a time. Make sure you have time for you. You can chat in some more questions or unmute your phone. I know I've given you a lot. I want you to encourage you to please visit our website. You see down there in purple, www.anthemeap.com, and your login, Bridgewater College. Truly, we have so much to help you. So if you need legal or financial consultations, is it advisable to be a conservator or a guardian? What, power of attorney you might need as your parent ages? There are ethical questions that are moving forward with these issues. And so the more you learn, the more prepared you are to help and manage both your financial life so you don't risk it, as well as your parents' physical and financial lives. So I'll leave it at this. I'll wait. We are just 1 minute past the top of the hour. If you have a question, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending. All the best. And once again, remember, you are not alone. We're here to help you at Anthem, and there are many resources online and in your community. Thank you so much, and have a great day.